The very first thing is to distinguish between mental fear and physical fear. Us humans are wired for fear. That's a given. We can all feel fear, and that's good.
Run away! Run away! Run away!
From needing to run as fast as we can from danger to being able to face danger with whatever resources we have to stay and fight, we can feel fear wash through our bodies when something is threatening to us. I know for me, getting close to the edge of a cliff, wanting to look over, I can feel the fear physically in my legs. So if there's a tiger in your path, the question, where does the fear come from, is easy to answer. You're afraid of the tiger. Physical fear is a well-designed feature, comes from your body perceiving a threat, and I don't have to say much more about it than that. Probably already said too many obvious things. On the other hand, the hand which I am inclined to talk about today, there are many fears that don't seem to have anything to do with our direct existence being immediately threatened. One person, for example, can be afraid of a spider. Another, if they see somebody sexually attractive to them and they want to approach said person, will feel fear. Public speaking, asking the boss for a raise, driving over a bridge for some people, riding in an elevator. I'm sure you can find examples for yourself. But why is this? Why would something with no immediate physical threat cause fear? Anytime you feel fear, it's the body that feels the fear. But I want to distinguish between physical fear and what I'm calling mental fear. Mental fears are physically non-threatening, but they're still fears. Just like physical fears, with mental fear, there will be something specific identified as the cause of the fear. Even if the mental fear is a vague anxiety, it will always seem as if something is the cause of it, even if you can't identify it just yet. But I think blaming mental fear on something, on some event, is a mistake. Saying mental fear is caused by this or that obscures the real mechanisms behind what's happening. So I'm going to talk about mental fear in a different way than you might have heard of. I want to describe the mechanisms of mental fear in such a way that it's not about any particular story or event. To do this, I'll talk about the interaction between perception and the way we can create stories about what's happening through our particular lens. I want to examine what happens below the surface of our stories, irregardless of whatever the thing was that started it all. I'm going to present pieces that go into creating the conditions for mental fear. That way we can watch them, as if in a slow motion instant replay, and take a good look at something that usually happens in a flash. And that's what I want to talk about today. Hello and welcome to the 10 Crutches podcast. My name is David. I'm glad you're here. Let's remember, we have a body that's wired up to feel fear. If the perception of any of our senses translates into an immediate threat, we have a very, very quick fear response. Let's also make explicit that this physical fear reaction is totally automatic. No conscious control is needed. No story is needed. The body perceives, and then the body feels the physical fear. In fact, conscious control isn't fast enough to work with these protective fear instincts. That's why you just can't think, I want to feel fear starting right now, and then actually feel the fear. I'll get back to this later. Our bodies feel physical fear when they are physically threatened. That's the basis. The mind, to whatever extent you can separate it out from the body, the mind itself can't feel fear. The mind can recognize things. It tells stories about all kinds of things. It can evaluate good and bad, safe and unsafe, but the mind itself doesn't feel safe or unsafe. The mind itself doesn't feel afraid. The mind exists in a way that can't be threatened the same way a physical body can. Only the body can feel fear. That's an important distinction to recognize. As I've said in other episodes on this 10 Crutches podcast, we are all single beings. We're just one being, but it hardly ever feels that way. We live our lives as if we are thinking and feeling inside of a body. We live like our minds are being carried along by our body. Our single being experiences itself as being divided, and we are, in that sense, divided. Even if it is an illusory division, it's a real illusory division. It's kind of like if you hold a small square of cardboard in your hand. You can count that it has 4 edges and 2 surfaces. The edges and surfaces are inseparable from each other. They define each other as a small square of cardboard. If you hold this cardboard on edge in front of your left eye and close the right eye, you will see only the edge. Close the left eye and open the right. You'll see only a surface. Or you can hold it away from you and see 2 edges and 1 surface. The cardboard's going to look different depending on how you look at it, but it's always a single piece of cardboard. It's also interesting to note that from your single point of view, you can never see the totality of the cardboard, the 4 edges and the 2 surfaces, all at the same time. In a similar way to seeing these partial views of a small square of cardboard, we see ourselves as either the mind or the body. Let's look at mental fear in terms of these 2 modalities that we operate with, mind and body. The illusion of having a mind separate from a body results in a real consequence. It means that there's 2 perceptions going on, more or less at the same time. A single being with the illusion of separateness results in 2 different perceptions, as well as 2 different energy systems and 2 different courses of action. First, let's consider the body. The body perceives, let's say, directly, through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, bodily sensations. The body is also the recipient of what the mind is thinking and believing. So the body is affected by 1, its own perceptions, and 2, the stories that the mind tells it. So here is the body, perceiving and reacting as it does. We can note that the body has directness. If the body perceives something that, for example, is coming at it quickly, might hit its eye, the body will blink, move the head, duck, all by instinct. The body interacts with the mind in many situations, but not always. In many ways, the body is quite independent of the mind. The body's fully up and running without the thinking mind. The heart is beating, lungs are breathing, food's being digested, etc., etc. So, for example, after the body instinctively ducks from a flying object, the mind has to catch up and will create its story from what happened. But the action happens prior to thought. Second, let's consider the mind. The mind is also perceiving, but everything the mind perceives, it perceives through the body, through the senses of the body, which funnel their information to the mind. The mind takes all that information from the body into its, shall we say, its realm. The mind also has access to memories, to social standards, to ideals of right and wrong, desires for how it wants things to be, etc. The mind is storing the names of things, faces, meanings of things, this, that, the other. Or is it the body that stores memories? Because we are single beings, in a way there's nothing but overlap between mind and body, but right now we're focused somewhere past the frontier where they appear separate. When I described the body as direct, the mind is, in this particular story, indirect. Information about the world does not come directly to the mind. It comes indirectly via the body. If the body has perceived something and the mind wants the body to act in such and such a way towards that thing, it may or may not get that result. So we have a body making sense of things as it does, and a mind making sense of things as it does. In the example before of something coming quickly at your eye, the body is not going to ask the mind, do you think I should duck now? No, the body's just going to duck. For an example of the mind trying to lead the way, you can reflect on a time in bed just past the alarm going off, and the mind is trying to get the entire being out of bed to go to work, and the body is curled up in a ball saying just 5 more minutes, please, please. For the most part, in our illiterate culture, it is the mind, the symbol maker, that is trying to lead the way. Living in a literate culture means much more than most of us know how to read. The side effects of being literate are largely unseen by many people. I'm going to put a link to Marshall McLuhan in the show notes with a bit more about this. For now, I will say that being able to read means we all know how to represent things. You can look at little squiggly lines on a piece of paper or on a screen, and they represent sounds in your head. And in my head, the same sounds. You or I, we could read the same words and have more or less the same sounds coming out of our mouths. And then those sounds themselves, which are really just sounds. Sounds also carry symbolic meaning. So weird squiggly lines become weird sounds. So one of us can send a text and say, hey, let's go to the beach. And we both understand what a beach is, even though we are both many miles away from an actual beach. So all that gets called reading. But why bother mentioning it? Because literate people are inclined to see the world by representation rather than by directly perceiving. René Magritte showed us this with paint on a canvas, and he very aptly called it the treachery of images. Inside the painting, there's something that looks like a pipe. There's also something that looks like the words, ce n'est pas une pipe, or this is not a pipe. I put that painting in the show notes in case you've never seen it. And I also put Magritte's painting, The Human Condition, in the show notes as well. One painting sums up the entire premise of a whole podcast. So actual things like flowers that exist in color, shape, texture, they can also be represented in words or in a painting or a photo. Not only that, but like with flowers, they can represent something else entirely. Like flowers can represent my love for someone or that I want that someone to forgive me for some dumb thing I did. But I have to actually give actual flowers. If I give my love a piece of paper with the word flowers written on it, I don't get the same result. But only the mind is into representation, never the body. The mind itself is representation, nothing but representation. The body only deals with things in and of themselves. The flowers are always to the body flowers, just the colors, the smells, the shapes, etc. The word flowers and any meaning of flowers, in fact, all represented meaning is in the domain of the mind. This results in a life where the body perceives things as they are directly, while at the same time, pretty much, the mind is also perceiving the thing indirectly via the body's direct perception, but the mind immediately layers on the meaning of the thing, the story about the thing, all the memories and context and interpretations of the thing. So even though there's a single being, the mind and the body have two different perceptions, sometimes radically different perceptions. And besides having different perceptions, the mind and the body can have very different desires, follow very different goals, and have very different agendas. The human body, to repeat, is simple and direct. Its goals are to survive and to adapt as best as possible to whatever circumstances it finds itself in. The body wants to enjoy what can be enjoyed and will tolerate or try to escape what can't be enjoyed. Even an amoeba swimming toward food or away from something noxious is following this basic pattern. The human body will attempt to change the circumstances to suit it as best as possible, and from this regard, it's like any animal, like any creature. The human mind, on the other hand, has much grander goals. This is because the human mind has some awareness of its connection to the universe, some inkling of how it is a manifestation of the universal intelligence. I think of it kind of like the way colors are refracted through a prism. Each color coming out of a prism is a partial aspect of the white light that enters the prism. We can imagine the universal intelligence entering the human race, all the bodies of all the humans, where this one great intelligence is refracted into all the various manifestations of human intelligence. Because our particular variation of intelligence is animated by the universal intelligence, because unlimited intelligence is manifesting in a very limited human body-mind setup, it's quite easy to get confused. One way to look at the 10 Crutches podcast as a whole is that I'm trying to untangle the threads of the confusion that many of us experience. Our minds want to identify with the universal. That's why we can love ideals, why we can strive to be certain, why some of us strive for stillness. These are all qualities we imagine as universal. For those whose intelligence is refracted in other ways, their focus is more on the body, on the actual practical things of the life, rather than ideals. How we are animated results in how we see the world. So the mind, in its illusory separation, is trying to prove to itself how it is, after all, universal. But it can only use the limited human body to do the proving. This leads the mind to be disappointed over and over and over with the body, with the particular circumstances. The mind can even, in a deep case of separation, sometimes wish to discard the body, to be unencumbered by it. But, of course, as a single being, the mind aspect can never discard the body aspect. It's like the surface trying to discard the edge. The goals of the body itself, as we said, the goals of the animal/human body are simple and clear and always directly related to the environment, to reality. The goals of the mind, however, have to do with the mental world that the mind has constructed. Inside its mental realm, the mind appears to itself as universally important. The mind appears to itself as central to the universe of the realm. Inside its own mental domain, the mind takes events perceived directly from the body and interprets them. Any goal of the body is focused on the actual environment. Any goal of the mind is focused ultimately on the body, on how much can the body prove the mind's centrality to the universe. Both the body and the mind test each circumstance for being helpful or harmful. But the body is testing helpful or harmful in terms of its physical survival, in terms of its realistic pleasures and pains. The mind is testing helpful and harmful in terms of the body, in terms of what does this prove about me being the center of the universe. If the mind has a story that something's moving me closer to proving how central I am, then it's good. If it's proving me less than central, it's bad. Okay. So, for our slow motion view of mental fear, we need one more piece. Both body and mind, in any given moment, have a history. But again, the history of a particular body will diverge from the history of the mind that tags along with that particular body. The body's essential fear is of death, the actual physical end. Even though an infant can't verbalize it or have any conception of death, when an infant is wailing from hunger or needing a diaper to be changed, whatever, it's the central fear of annihilation, of the end. Cockroaches have it, squirrels have it, deers have it, human bodies have it. The central fear, the reason for all the hard wiring of fear, is of death. For the mind, the central fear is also of annihilation, but not a physical death, not a physical annihilation. The mind fears annihilation in the sense of its individuality disappearing into the immensity of the universe. The mind creates stories of itself as the center of the universe to keep track of itself, to prove to itself that it still exists, because the mind wants to be the turning point of all that it perceives. So using this model, using the pieces we've built up so far, let's find a specific example of a mental fear, and then we'll see what happens when we go slow motion. Okay, here's a situation. Imagine yourself in it. You come into work, which is in an office, and there's a note on your desk from the boss, an actual physical note, not a text message. I know, just please go with me. Please see me as soon as you read this. That's what the note says. And a bolt of fear goes through your body. Please see me as soon as you read this. Possible scenarios of what this could mean start to flood your awareness. So now we stop. That's the example. The fear is felt in the body. And this is strictly a mental fear. There is nothing physically threatening in the immediate environment. In this example, there's only a piece of paper with squiggly lines that have meaning. There's nothing that the body can directly perceive at that moment that will harm it. So the first thing to do is to note how easy it is to think that this mental fear is related to a specific thing. Maybe you did something wrong and the company lost a ton of money. Maybe you're just about to lose your job. The fact that you have no idea what's going on just makes it worse, because you felt the fear. There must be something to be afraid of. If you just continue at normal speed, all the fear will seem related to possible bad consequences that you may soon encounter. And let's acknowledge, you may very well encounter some serious shit. You don't know why the boss wants to see you, but standing there, that moment at your desk, the 1 second after you read the note and felt the fear, remember, we're going to rewind a bit and proceed in slow motion, but let's establish clearly the body, 1 second after the note has been read, has zero reason to be afraid. There's no tigers, no edge of the cliff nearby, no physical threat to the body in the vicinity. This is called mental fear because it begins in the mind. Mental fears begin with meaning. So let's take it from the top. You walk up to your desk, you see the note lying there, and your eyes immediately focus on the words. So now we slow way, way down. We're going to go so slow now. In effect, you're almost still. You're just about to read the note, but you have not yet read it. Reading the note is a combination effort of the body, which physically sees the squiggly lines of the note, and the mind, which grasps those images and as we said, can take the squiggly lines and read them, can make sense of the lines. So in our slow motion, we have observed the body seeing the physical note, and the mind starts to make meaning of the note. Let's freeze frame again. We're still stopped right at the moment before any fear is being felt. The meaning of the note has registered in the mind, but the mind hasn't yet moved to create any story about the meaning of the note, about the meaning of please see me as soon as you read this. So we're going very, very slow motion. Please see me as soon as you read this. And at this point, please remember, whatever may unfold inside the boss's office, the mind has no idea. The mind is about to, in a couple more microseconds, it's about to come up with all kinds of stories about what may happen. But our slow motion is going to allow us to see a more general pattern that has nothing to do with this particular circumstance. The mind is constantly testing to see if it's at the center of the universe. The mind is always asking, am I in charge? Am I in control? Are things going the way I want them to go in order to prove how central I am in the universe? That's always happening in this model, in this story. The content of the note on the desk clearly reveals to the mind at this frozen moment the answer is no. The meaning of the note is clear. You are not in charge. You don't know what's going on. You must contend with larger forces that you have no control over. This is intolerable to the mind. The mind really, in the very bottom line, couldn't give two shits about the body having to walk into that office and find out what the note means. The mind starts to check out as soon as it's clear that the mind is not in charge. The mind doesn't essentially care about the job or about what happened or what the boss wants to see about, or the mind doesn't care about anything except whether or not it's succeeding in its goal to be at the center. I am calling this a fundamental concern of the mind. In slow motion, we can see that the mind's deepest intelligence, where this questioning is happening, the very first personal manifestation, I guess we could call it, as the universal refracts into the personal. At that frontier, the deepest intelligence comes from the universal, comes through the human mind into the human body. But this deepest aspect of our intelligence abandons the current reality to some extent. The mind takes refuge inside its own invented realm, inside the realm of the mind, where it can still see things as if it's the center of the universe. Keeping this very slow motion going, we can see now that the body faces a long, lonely walk to the boss's office. The body's going to need to move the legs and the feet, walk to the boss's door, move the hand to grasp the doorknob, open the door, etc. But the body will have to do this without its intelligent protector, without the deep and connected intelligence. With some aspects of the intelligent mind gone, the body feels a bolt of fear. But since there is nothing in the environment to actually threaten it, since there is nothing within direct perception to cause physical fear, the body has only one thing left to be afraid of: death. In slow motion, you can see that the bolt of fear, in a very profound way, has nothing to do with the note at all. The note causes the mind, the intelligence of the body, to abandon the body and retreat into its mental realm. The mind was making an impossible demand on the reality that the body inhabits. The mind was bound to be defeated because it was making such a grandiose claim. The bolt of fear is not the body being afraid of the encounter with the boss. The body is afraid of death in the face of the loss of its intelligence. Again, in slow motion, we can see the beginning of that flood of thoughts come into the mind, thoughts that occupy much of the attention as the body walks to the boss's office, thoughts that the mind assumes are the cause of the fear that its flight just created. But all these thoughts are simply the after-the-fact rationalizations that the mind conjures up. It needs this flood of thoughts. The mind needs to make up stories to explain why it felt that fear. I invite you to check this out. If you've listened this far, you are in a great position. Next time one of these bolts of mental fear goes through you, you can test this story. The first thing you do is you bring body and mind together as best as you can to really examine your physical, immediate environment. Is there any actual physical threat? If not, and if it's really a mental fear, there won't be. You can assume that the body felt the primal fear of death in the face of its being abandoned by the mind. Use your mind now to reassure it by checking what the body needs to check. Is there an actual physical threat? When you establish that there's not, take some deep breaths, perhaps even make some large body movements to metabolize the fear you just felt back into a more or less normal state. Like if you can do jumping jacks, if that's socially acceptable in the situation you're in, that's good. You've seen dogs shake stress off, something like that. Fear in the body leaves a physical residue that needs to be managed. You can also use your now present intelligent mind to remind yourself that it's not essential to be at the center of meaning in the universe. It's not essential, and it's also not even possible. As a human, you get to have one meaning out of many. The universal intelligence, to the extent that you can get in touch with it, can remind your being it doesn't need to run off and pretend it's at the center. It can hang out right in the present reality that you're in. So as you walk to the boss's office, you can actually be present and take care of what's actually going on. I believe this is a very specific way to view the meaning of pull yourself together. You've seen that in movies. Somebody shakes somebody, pull yourself together. You're pulling together the body and the mind with their hugely different agendas. You are pulling all the pieces and all the different aspects of you towards the same, for lack of a better word, towards the same center. So now we can make sense of what I was saying earlier. Consciously saying, I want to feel the fear now. And then looking and listening intently to your environment. It can help you calm down from these mental fears, especially if you're subject to anxiety attacks. Please try it out. If you can remember in the midst of an anxiety attack, rather than being scared of the fear, rather than being scared of being out of control, say, in effect, okay, bring it on. Come on, fear. Where are you coming from? Huh? Come on. I want to feel you. If you can do that, if you can really look and listen directly and fully fill your senses with what's actually happening around you, you'll calm down. You'll calm down because there's no immediate physical threat, and your senses can only perceive the present, non-threatening environment. And meanwhile, your mind will be present as well because it's focused on saying, come on, fear, I want to feel you. I want to feel you, rather than spinning stories about how bad anxiety is. In moments of mental fear, you can pull yourself together. Mental fears can become reminders to manifest in the present moment the single being you already are. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time. Please visit the home of the 10 Crutches podcast at 10crutches.link. That's 10crutches.link. The book that inspired the podcast, a book I wrote called 10 Crutches for Walking in the Present, is available for free download on the website. While you are there, please take advantage of 2 ways to contact me. You can send me an email, or you can make a voice recording. If you have a great question, I may be able to use it for the podcast. Also on the website, you can visit the archive to hear any published episode and see show notes for any and every show. Thanks so much for listening. And once again, thanks so much for listening. And I won't say it once again. See you next time.